Introduction to the Linux Server, produced by the FOSS Server Project. The FOSS Server Project promotes the use of free and open source software, FOSS, to bring opportunities to people around the world. Linux is an open source operating system. Based on Unix, it was first created by Linus Torvalds in the early 1990s. The name is a combination of Linus plus Unix for these reasons. Developed and first offered as FOSS, the Linux operating system is available for free in source code format for anyone who wants to study it or change it. Various distributions are available which offer the Linux operating system along with a full-featured system and operating environment, including the following: the Linux kernel, which provides startup, multitasking, scheduling, interrupt handling, and other core parts of the system. A file system supporting storage and filing handling for the separate components of the system. Libraries providing many functions, including a C library, math library, security and authentication libraries, etc. Tools and utilities, including a shell or shells for interactive console programs. Applications which provide popular user programs like Firefox or OpenOffice. All of these Linux distributions are offered as FOSS. Some of the more popular or well-known Linux distributions are listed here. Debian was the first Linux distribution offered by multiple contributors. Ubuntu is a more recent distribution which is based on Debian, has a growing support and developer community, and has become popular within the last decade. Red Hat is one of the first commercial Linux distributions which is still offered as FOSS under the Fedora Server project. Slackware is one of the first Linux distributions which is still available. SUSE is a distribution coming from the German Linux community, and Mandriva, formerly Mandrake, is a distribution derived from French and Brazilian FOSS communities. Cygwin is an important Linux distribution because it runs on Windows. This port of Linux allows the use of the Linux operating system environment and programs while hosting it on a Windows computer. The Linux distribution used in the remainder of this discussion, and as the example for the Linux server, is an Ubuntu distribution created specifically for the education field, known as Edubuntu. The Edubuntu server includes all of the features of Ubuntu, including support for Apache, MySQL, and PHP, but it also includes applications and tools tailored specifically for the teaching environment in the classroom. It also supports thin client networks through the Linux Terminal Services Project, or LTSP. Thin client networks allow more student access to the server through terminals which have a less computing power need and keep the minimum costs and hardware requirements down for the classroom network. The Ubuntu Linux distribution is available as a free download through the Ubuntu webpage at www.ubuntu.com. Ubuntu is available under a free license called the General Public License as FOSS. Anyone can download the Ubuntu server or desktop environments from this website for free. The software can also be ordered from Ubuntu for shipment via DVD if an internet connection is not available for download. DVD copies of the software are still free, but there may be a small amount charged for the DVD media and the shipping. The Ubuntu website also provides important links to the worldwide Ubuntu community, offering knowledge bases, forums, documentation, and discussion groups. Use the support links from the Ubuntu website for any question you have at the end of this video. The Edubuntu version of Ubuntu can be downloaded from the website for Edubuntu at www.edubuntu.com. This software is also available under the GPL as FOSS. Go to the http://cdimage ubuntu.com/edubuntu/releases and choose the latest release in order to get the latest Ubuntu server. At this time, the 12.04 version of the Ubuntu server is provided with the Ubuntu server. Some of the examples in this discussion later are based on older copies of the Ubuntu server. You will obviously need another computer which already has an operating environment running on it to connect to the Ubuntu website and download the Ubuntu server. However, this can be on any computer which has an internet connection, even if it is not a Linux computer. Since most of the FOSS server software is provided by a worldwide community of volunteers and developers, it is important to make sure that software downloaded from the internet is the original software and does not contain malware, bugs, or errors. You should only download FOSS server software from a website which you trust. Also, using the MD5 checksum of the download allows an easy way to check that the image you download is the same as what is offered by the trusted website. You can find the MD5 checksum values reported for the Ubuntu server software on the Ubuntu Downloads page. From the Downloads page, click on the link for the MD5 sums file. When you open the MD5 sums file, you will find a checksum number listed for each download image. In order to verify that your download matches the image being offered, you must download the full image and then check the download's MD5 signature. The Linux MD5 sum utility will check the signature for you and report the MD5 checksum of the downloaded image. It is important that you do this check prior to installing the image on your server. This usually requires another server or computer. Once you have verified the Ubuntu image downloaded on your local computer, you must burn this image to a DVD before you can use it. You will need some DVD burning software in order to burn the image downloaded to a blank DVD. It is important that you burn this image as an ISO image, which produces a bootable DVD when you are done. If you burn the Ubuntu server image as a file, you will not be able to use it for installation as shown in the remainder of this video. After you have created the Ubuntu DVD, you can follow the Ubuntu installation procedure for installing a new Ubuntu server. The key steps of the Ubuntu installation process are shown here. These steps may vary some between different distributions of Linux, but the installation of most Linux distributions follow a similar procedure. It begins with configuration of the language and keyboard so the server can understand the users. Next, the server's network configuration is usually set up so that the server can communicate with other servers. The permanent storage devices are normally formatted and configured in order to store the file system on the server. Ubuntu and other Linux distributions usually do not perform the configuration of the system bootloader at this time, but will normally do that at the end of the installation after all of the system packages are loaded. Server clock and time zone configuration is set up during installation. Servers which are part of a small network normally use local time, but servers which communicate with other servers or users from different parts of the world may be configured with a common time zone reference, such as GMT. A user account is normally set up during installation in order to allow server administration. Many Linux distributions will configure the root user account at this time, but Ubuntu only sets up a normal user which has elevated privileges for system administration when they are needed. This security feature of the Ubuntu distribution will be discussed later. The installation is normally completed by loading a base system, configuration of this base system software, and then loading of additional or optional packages. Now let's walk through a typical Ubuntu server installation as an example of the installation procedure just discussed. This example is of an Ubuntu 10.04 server. After downloading the Ubuntu image and burning it to a bootable disk, the disk will start the installation process when it is placed in the server and the server is rebooted. The screen shown here is the first screen presented to the installer, which allows the language to be set. This language setting is only for the installation program. A server system can be installed with a different base language than what is chosen for the installation here. You can see from this screen that Linux software supports internationalization with many different languages. Choose a language here to see the main menu of the installation disk. This is the main Ubuntu installation menu. It contains several options to support installation, evaluation, and troubleshooting of Ubuntu. The main options are listed in the center of the screen. These are chosen through keyboard input with the up or down arrow. At the bottom are a number of options F1 to F6, which can be chosen by the F1 to F6 keys. Taking a look at the main Ubuntu menu, the first option allows the user to run the Ubuntu system from the disk without installing the system permanently to the server storage device. This option is normally not used for a server install, but it allows evaluation of the software before installation or troubleshooting of the system after installation. This is known as a live CD. The next option is the option used to install the Ubuntu server. Choose this option to begin the installation. We will cover the rest of the installation procedure when this option is selected, after covering the rest of the install menu. The third option on the installation menu allows the installer to verify that the disk is a complete image. This option will perform integrity checks of the installation disk prior to installation by ensuring the system can access the disk and verifying its checksum. It is important to note that this checksum verification does not provide the same reliability as the MD5 checksum procedure discussed during download. It is important when downloading the Ubuntu image that the image be verified against the MD5 checksum, which is provided separately from the image itself. The install menu option for Check Disk for Defects uses the checksum provided with the disk image itself. Checking against a published, known, good checksum is more reliable for finding errors or malware than using the checksum which is saved as part of the image, because a compromised image may have its checksum altered also. For this reason, it is safer and more reliable to verify the checksum of the disk image after download by using the published Ubuntu MD5 signature as discussed previously. The next option on the install menu will perform a memory test. This check is not related to the install disk, but is a RAM test of the system's installed memory. The last option on the main Ubuntu install menu is for use when a system already exists on the server. If the system has a primary hard drive with another version of Ubuntu or another operating system which is already installed, this option will skip the new Ubuntu installation and boot with the other system. Using this option will prevent the Ubuntu server installation, but it may help with troubleshooting or for collecting server information prior to the Ubuntu server install. At the bottom of the Ubuntu installation screen are numbers F1 to F6, which provide other options for the installation session. The first F1 option provides a help screen, which provides a brief explanation of each other install option. The F2 option brings up the language selection screen, which was seen before. This screen allows the installer to change the language of the installation program. As noted before, this only changes the language used during the installation session. The base system language is chosen later during the key steps of the actual installation, which will be covered later. The third option, F3, allows selection of a different keyboard configuration. A US 101 type keyboard key map is the default configuration of the installation session. This option under the F3 key may be used if you have a different keyboard connected. As with the language setting, this option only changes the configuration of the keyboard during the installation, and the base system keyboard configuration will be set later. The F4 option for the Ubuntu server usually allows a different startup mode for the server. This may include single user, text, or graphics modes. For Ubuntu, the F4 option only allows a graphics startup configuration because the Ubuntu system is based on a graphical desktop with applications. For troubleshooting purposes, this option can be changed manually with the F6 option discussed later. The F5 option provides configuration which supports different features related to accessibility, including several for vision-impaired users, as shown here. The last option, F6, offers some advanced booting options for the system to be installed. The F6 option allows for the selection of some defined advanced options, but it also allows for entry of other options. When using the F6 option, a boot command line is opened and the installer can enter other custom boot options which will be used with the system. The example shown here adds a debug option which will configure the server to allow more debugging information in its logs when starting up. Many other startup options which are supported in the Linux kernel are described more in the Linux kernel documentation, which comes with the open source version of the FOSS kernel. Now we will walk through the installation process for the Edge Ubuntu server, which begins by choosing the second option from the main menu. The normal Edge Ubuntu server installation provides a graphical user interface with entry via keyboard or mouse. After beginning the installation, the install program will display various dialog boxes as the key steps of the installation are accomplished as discussed earlier. The first dialog displayed is the language selection dialog. Unlike the language option seen before, this dialog allows selection of the language for the system to be installed on the server. Choose the language of the base system here. The Edge Ubuntu install next displays the time zone selection dialog. This step is earlier than the key steps described before for the standard Ubuntu server installation. The standard Ubuntu server install configures the input devices and other hardware prior to setting the time. This is typical of most other Ubuntu installation procedures. However, the Edge Ubuntu server installation prompts the user to set the time zone before the other hardware configuration is done. Choose the time zone desired for the server using the dialog shown here. As mentioned before, the local time zone is a good configuration for a small local network. Servers with many international users or services should be configured with a common reference like GMT. Next, the dialog for keyboard configuration is displayed. This defaults to what was used when starting the installation, but can be changed if the server will use a different keyboard during normal service. The Edge Ubuntu installation program will start the disk partitioning program next in order to search for a permanent storage device, such as a hard drive, on which to install the system. If a bootable hard drive is found on the system, the install program will display a dialog for configuration of this drive next. If another operating system or previous version of Edge Ubuntu is found on the drive at this time, an option is provided to use another part of the drive for the new version of Edge Ubuntu and to set up the server to boot from either system. In this example, the entire hard drive will be used for installation of the new system. With some Linux server installation programs, formatting of the permanent storage device will occur following selection of these partition options, which is immediately after this step. Any data previously saved in the partition which is formatted will not be retrievable after this step for these other systems. This is not the case with the Edge Ubuntu server. The Edge Ubuntu installation program used in this example does not perform the formatting of the new system partition until all of the installation options are confirmed later. This approach allows the partitioning and disk options to be changed later before the installation configuration is confirmed and the final installation proceeds. Now that all of the hardware configuration options have been chosen, the Edge Ubuntu server's first user account will be set up. In the dialog asking, "Who are you?" enter the user account name and password for the account, which the server administrator will use after installation. An option can be chosen to log in automatically to this account when starting the server. If this is not changed, the default configuration will start the server with a user login screen for security purposes. Selection of the option for automatic login is not recommended because of best practices for security. This completes the selection of installation options. At this point, a summary is displayed for what will be installed. If confirmed by choosing Install, the installation will begin and the system will be saved to permanent storage on the server. If a different configuration is desired than what is shown in the summary, the installer can use the back button to return to a previous step and change an option. By confirming the installation options and choosing Install, the install will begin. The remainder of the installation may take 15 to 20 minutes to complete. A dialog box with a progress bar will be shown during the remainder of the server installation. During this installation, some information is printed over the progress bar in order to report what the installation program is currently doing. As shown here, the installation program will first partition and format the permanent storage used for the system. The / or root system shown here represents the Linux root file system. Next, the installation copies the base system software from the disk media to the system in permanent storage. This includes the key steps for base system installation and additional packages. The depackage process will be shown later during the installation, which indicates that the Debian package utility is being used for the configuration of the system software. An installation complete dialog is shown when the server installation is complete. Choosing the Restart Now button will end the install session and shut down the server for rebooting as shown. Remove the installation disk and restart the server. Once the server is booted, a login screen will be presented to log into the user account set up earlier. If the automatic login option was selected during install, which is not recommended, the server will start up as this user account without a login screen. Once the server is running and the user has logged in, the Ubuntu desktop will be displayed as shown here. Security is important when installing and operating a server. Establishing user accounts with strong password protection is key to protecting a server from unauthorized access. Even though the Linux server program may allow a configuration for a server without a user login, this is not recommended. Best practices call for a server to be configured with a password-protected user login on startup. The level of password protection should also be higher than a simple password. Strong password protection requires the use of password rules as shown here. Passwords should be at least 10 characters long and contain various characters as shown. Easy to remember patterns should be avoided. A server security feature unique to the Ubuntu distribution is the use of a normal user account for server administration in lieu of the root or administrator account. It is common for servers running other operating systems or other distributions of Linux to have the system administrator log into a root or administrator account, which has elevated user permissions for system administration until the account is exited. With Ubuntu servers, system administration is normally done through a user account which does not normally have administrator permissions. The first account configured during the Ubuntu installation is configured in this manner. It is normally configured with normal user permissions. This prevents a malicious user from gaining elevated privileges if the server is compromised while the system administrator is logged in. The first user account is also added to the sudo user group during installation, so the system administrator who uses this account can obtain elevated permissions when necessary for server configuration by using the Linux sudo command. The Linux superuser-do or sudo command allows a temporary elevation of privileges for the user accounts which are members of the sudo user group. The Linux sudo command will also return the user account to normal user permissions automatically after a certain amount of time. With Ubuntu, it is recommended that the system administrator use the first user account created during installation in order to perform all server configuration with the sudo command. This provides the highest level of security to a Linux server and supports the Ubuntu server implementation of best practices for system security. This concludes the introduction to the Linux server. The FOSS server project produces these materials in order to promote the use of FOSS servers around the world. For more information on the FOSS server project, including ongoing FOSS server projects around the world and how you may help, please visit www.veraserver.net and choose FOSS.